All right, we'll get started in just a moment. I can see the participants are coming in, so I want to make sure that it's had an opportunity to, opportunity for everybody to join. So bear with us for just a moment. I see that some people are asking questions about whether we can let the AI note takers in. I will say, just for the sake of ensuring there's enough room, there is limited room in the meeting. I think that note takers will not be allowed in. It also seems like perhaps there is a setting in Zoom not allowing the AI note takers, but the meeting is being recorded and it will be made available afterwards. So, all right, let's see. I still see the numbers ticking up. So bear with us. All right, I am just going to go ahead and get started, and folks can catch up. So thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Georgia Hartman. I'm a senior program officer for climate and gender at the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, and I'm also manager of the RISE Challenge. And it is in that capacity that I am very pleased to welcome you all here today to the launch of the 2025 grantee cohort, as well as the launch of a new GBV Referral Pathways guidance note. So let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, Jason. So first, just a couple of housekeeping tips. So please note the session is being recorded and will be made available on our webpage and on YouTube. We will have two Q&A sessions, first after the grantee roundtable and then after the presentation of the guidance note. Please send your questions via the Q&A option, not the meeting chat, for example. The facilitators will receive your questions and share it with the speakers. We will also have a survey near the end of the session, and we appreciate you taking a moment to complete it. It's just 3 questions, I promise. It will not take long. And please do stay in touch with us by joining our mailing list, and I'll drop the link to that in just a moment. And you may also, of course, get in touch with us via the RISE team email address. So next slide. So this presentation, of course, does address gender-based violence, which can be difficult or triggering for many people. So we do urge you to take care during this presentation. So very quickly, the agenda. Next slide. So we have a tight agenda today, and in the interest of time, I'll highlight here just a couple of the main points. I'm really pleased that we have opening remarks from NORAD, and an announcement the announcement of and remarks from our RISE winners, and then the launch of the guidance note. So, and as I said, each session will be followed by a brief Q&A. So next slide. Now, before we get started, I think most people here at the meeting probably know what the RISE Challenge is, but just in case we have some newbies, I just wanted to kind of go over a couple of main points about RISE, so we're all on the same page. So, of course, I am pleased to welcome you to this event. The RISE Challenge was created in response to findings from IUCN's 2020 Violence of Inequality report. And this report highlighted the links between gender-based violence, gender inequality, and environmental challenges. Since then, RISE has supported 23 projects across Africa, Asia, Oceania, and the Americas, all working in that GBV environment nexus. And as you can see, the demand for support in this space is both significant and growing. Now, I do realize that the most recent grantee cohort there, it looks smaller, but numbers can be deceiving, and there were significant more restrictions put on that last cohort. So proportionally, it is still very much a rising number. And, one of the most unique aspects of RISE that I always really like to highlight is that it very intentionally brings together organizations specializing in environment work and in GBV prevention, bringing them together, two sectors that have traditionally operated in silos. And with that RISE funding, environmental and GBV specializing organizations work together to address shared challenges in this nexus. And so one of the principal goals for IUCN through this work is to work with grantees to develop learning that can be used to influence environmental policy and practice globally. And so that is why we are here today. So with that, let's move on to opening remarks from our colleagues from NORAD. So we are very proud today to be joined by Martin Larnemark. Martin is the acting head of section for nature and climate in NORAD's Department for Climate, Nature, and the Private Sector. He has more than 20 years of experience in development cooperation with CEDA, the European Commission, embassies, and of course, NORAD. Over the last decade, he has held various positions within NORAD with a focus on evidence-based development cooperation, results management, and climate and nature programming. Welcome, Martin.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone. It's really a pleasure to be with you today. And thank you also to the International Union for Conservation of Nature for organizing this important event. Norway is a proud partner of IUCN to support the Resilient, Inclusive and Sustainable Environment, or RISE, challenge, and it is fantastic to join you for the launch of the latest cohort of grantees. Norway has long been committed to advancing gender equality, the prevention of gender-based violence, and environmental sustainability as central pillars of our development cooperation. These commitments are reflected throughout Norwegian development policy and manifested in, for example, Norway's action plan for women's rights and gender equality, in our thematic portfolios for green development and ocean-related work, including specific programs such as Fish for Development. Across these strategies, Norway emphasizes that sustainable environmental management must go hand in hand with inclusive and equitable societies. Environmental challenges such as climate change, biodiversity loss, and resource scarcity do not affect all people equally. In many contexts, women and girls face heightened vulnerabilities, including increased risk of gender-based violence. At the same time, women play critical roles in environmental stewardship, natural resource management, and climate adaptation. Supporting their leadership and addressing structural barriers, including violence and discrimination, is therefore essential for achieving both sustainable development and environmental resilience. Despite growing recognition of these links, there is still limited practical knowledge about how to effectively address gender-based violence and gender inequality within environmental and climate programming. This is where initiatives like the RISE Challenge are so important. The RISE Challenge initiative represents an innovative effort to address this gap by supporting locally led organizations working at the intersection of gender equality and environmental stewardship. Through targeted grant funding, RISE Challenge enables organizations to test new approaches, generate practical learning, and demonstrate how environmental initiatives can also advance gender equality and help prevent and respond to gender-based violence, making a difference for local communities and vulnerable populations. Being able to demonstrate that impact is critical. Equally important, RISE serves as a knowledge-generating initiative, helping to build the evidence base of what works at the intersection of gender-based violence prevention, and environmental action. This knowledge is essential for strengthening policies, programs, and partnerships across the environmental sector. So I'm pleased today to congratulate and highlight the important work that this year's RISE grantee cohort will undertake. This includes Oxfam, who will work with Banty Stray and the Cultural and Environment Presentation Association in Cambodia. Fauna and Flora, who will work with the Center for Studies in Applied Sciences in Gender, Family, Women and Adolescence in Vietnam. and Tier Fund will work with the Congo Initiative and IFED in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. These organizations bring deep local knowledge, strong community relationships, and innovative ideas for addressing complex challenges in their respective contexts. Addressing the interconnected challenges of gender inequality, gender-based violence, and environmental change requires collaboration across sectors, disciplines, and communities. It also requires continued innovation and learning. Through its support for Rise Challenge, Norway is proud to contribute to advancing this important area of work and to supporting organizations that are developing practical solutions on the ground. Now, we're really looking forward to hearing from these organizations to learn from their experiences and insights during today's presentations and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Martin, for your remarks and for Norway's leadership on these issues. Work at the intersection of gender-based violence and the environment remains a relatively under-researched and underfunded area, and Norway really stands out for its strong policy commitments on gender equality and nature, and through its willingness to invest in the practice. And, at a moment when progress on gender equality and environmental protection cannot be taken for granted, this leadership is more important than ever. So thank you very much. And with that, I am very pleased to pass the microphone on to the grantees themselves, so we can hear a little bit more about what's going to be what they're up to. So next slide, please. We'll hear from our first grantee. Helen Tarisai is the Program Funding Coordinator at Tier Fund in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. She is an experienced senior program development and funding acquisition professional with a demonstrated history of working in international development and humanitarian assistance programs in East and Central Africa. She is passionate about building partnerships for durable impacts in local communities. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you very much, Georgia. Firstly, I would like to thank the government of Norway for this innovative funding stream. Gender-based violence remains prevalent and is a significant challenge in Tanganyika. We have seen this as Tier Fund through our work in these locations. We have met women who have articulated the GBV risks they face as they pursue their land-based livelihoods. This is why I'm really excited to bring the RISE project to this location. This grant will enable us to work with an environmental organization as well as a women's organization to address these challenges. Our proposed RISE project will integrate into an existing environmental project activities that are aimed at mitigating the risks of gender-based violence that are linked to the access, use, and stewardship of indigenous managed forest and land resources. By integrating gender-responsive environmental governance with GBV risk mitigation strategies, the proposed RISE project will contribute to both ecological sustainability and GBV risk mitigation. We will co-develop GBV risk mitigation plans with the local community. This will include digital mapping of hotspots, safety audits, and community safety perception mapping to ensure the resulting plans are evidence-based and context-specific. These plans will define concrete safety measures for women, girls, and other vulnerable groups in the context of access to and use of land and forest lands. Provincial officials from the Ministries of Gender and Environment and local leaders will be trained on GBV risk mitigation with a focus on integrating protective measures into land and forest land management. The curriculum will be grounded in global best practices, adapting our core principles and guidance from established interagency resources. What makes our approach innovative is that we will integrate GBV best practices adapted for terrestrial indigenous managed lands. We will implement community-led GBV risk mitigation plans and strengthen the capacity of provincial officials and local leaders to ensure solutions are locally owned and sustainable. We believe that strengthening the capacity of provincial officials and local leaders is a strategy that can be replicated in other locations to build an enabling environment for women and girls in the context of access to and use of forest lands. As we set out to begin this all-important work, we believe that the outlined project activities will result in the implementation of protection measures for women when accessing lands and forest resources, strengthening the capacity of provincial and local leaders in integrating gender-responsive environmental governance frameworks and policies with GBV risk mitigation strategies will ensure locally owned and sustainable GBV risk mitigation measures in Kalemi and Nyunzu territories of Tanganyika province. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Helen. We're really excited about your project. And so moving on to the next speaker, I'm really pleased to introduce Estella Snowden, who is the Vietnam Country Program Manager for Fauna and Flora, where she oversees the operational management, development, and execution of the organization's conservation programs in Vietnam. She brings more than 10 years of experience working with cross-cultural teams and communities across Africa and Asia. Welcome, Estella.
Thank you so much, Georgia. And yeah, thank you, Helen, for the lovely introduction to your project. So the project that we have in Vietnam is called Safeguarding Communities and Tackling Gender-Based Violence for Inclusive Conservation. And this started for me last year when a female colleague on our team came to me and approached me saying that she felt uncomfortable going into the field. And it wasn't because she lacked interest or capacity. She was worried about harassment from some of the male partners that we work with, and specifically people in positions of authority that she felt she could not challenge. In conservation, we often talk about protection of ecosystems and wildlife, but the protection of the people doing the work matters just as much. If women feel unsafe participating in conservation, then we are losing voices, talent, and leadership. In many conservation landscapes, women are now increasing their participation in field work, but there is a gap in the systems and the processes to support them. Power imbalance, remote working conditions, and patriarchal systems can create environments where harassment, intimidation, or other forms of GBV go unreported or unaddressed. In Vietnam specifically, conservation activities often take place in isolated areas that involve working closely with authorities and communities. And it has been documented already that women working in conservation in Vietnam are at risk. If we do not address this, we undermine both gender equality and the long-term success of our efforts. So, how do we ensure that the work to protect nature also makes sure to preserve the safety and the dignity of the people involved? Our project will strive to make conservation spaces safer and more inclusive by embedding gender-based violence prevention and safeguarding into our activities. Women should feel safe to participate and confidently work in conservation work, whether that means joining patrol teams, engaging in livelihood activities, or taking part in decision-making and discussions about how forests and natural resources are managed. To do this, Fauna and Flora and the Center for Studies in Applied Sciences in Gender, Family, Women, and Adolescence, CSAGA, plan to strengthen the systems that support safe participation by working closely with our partners, and that includes conservation organizations, government, and community groups, to help them develop safeguarding policies, codes of conduct, and clear reporting mechanisms so that harassment or abuse can be safely reported and addressed. We will support 3 of the communities we work with to recognize and prevent risks and to challenge the underlying causes, which is here oftentimes patriarchal gender norms. Through dialogue, awareness sessions, and engagement with both women and men, we want to help people understand GBV and how everyone can play a role in preventing it. This will allow us to expand opportunities for women to participate in conservation as well as natural resource governance by supporting women's livelihoods, leadership in community groups, and their involvement in activities. We hope to create spaces where women's voice are both heard and valued. Through this work, women will gain safer access to opportunities, partners will have stronger systems in place, and communities will be better equipped to support respectful and equitable participation. What makes our approach different is that we're not treating gender-based violence as a separate social issue, but trying to embed it directly into our partnerships. As we all are aware who work in conservation, oftentimes power dynamics between NGOs, government authorities, and local communities can shape who feels safe to participate and whose voices are heard. So our focus will be on helping our partners recognize these dynamics and introduce practical ways to combat those. We are realistic that 8 months is not a long enough time to deeply transform these systems, but we hope to start the change or at least widen the conversation by focusing on these issues more prominently. And we thank the government of Norway for supporting this work. If successful, the goal is to integrate this approach across all of our sites in Vietnam. If we want conservation to succeed in the long term, we must ensure the spaces where conservation happens are safe and inclusive for everyone involved. This project is one small step, but it's an important one. Success will mean that women feel safer participating in activities, that partners have stronger systems to prevent and respond to harm, and that communities see that promotion of gender equity is a bigger part of protecting their natural resources. But this is not something that one organization or only one project can achieve by itself, and it will take much more time. Real change in systems, attitudes, norms, and power dynamics will require sustained collaboration, especially between governments, civil society, conservation NGOs, and communities. Our hope is that by starting these conversations and building these safeguards now, we can move towards a landscape where all of those we work with are protected. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Estella. And now let's move on to our last project. And I am very pleased to introduce Natasha Kim. Natasha is a gender and social inclusion specialist at Oxfam in Cambodia. They have over 19 years of experience in Cambodia's socioeconomic development sector, 13 years in advocacy, civil society, and the development sector, and have worked with Oxfam since 2018, where they engage closely with women and men in local communities to build capacity and support gender equality initiatives and gender justice goals. Welcome, Natasha.
Thank you very much, Georgia, for your introduction. So I would like to talk about our project, which is tackling gender-based violence in natural resources and biodiversity conservation in Cambodia. And I want to bring you to a village along the Mekong River in Stang Trang province. So we are meeting Sok Heng. She's a married mother of 4 in her late 30s, and she's a committee member of the local community fishery. It's a voluntary and unpaid position, and it brings much pride and meaning to her life. But it also involves actions or decisions that could put her and her family livelihood at risk. Her husband does not support this community engagement, and he blames her for arguments that arise between them. He also tries to prevent her from doing community work. Sok Heng's story is not unique. Many women in Cambodia face even more physical violence due to their engagement in community work and conservation. Indigenous women in Rattanakkiri province, which is the other province in which we will be working, are at risk of sexual or physical violence when they travel in the forest to collect non-timber forest products. Women who patrol in forests to prevent illegal logging or wildlife hunting are at risk of harm if and when they encounter criminal activities. Women are driven by a deep care for their communities and their families, and this care is embodied in their engagement in conservation efforts to protect the environment and the natural resources that sustain their loved ones and their communities. But at the same time, they may be harassed, intimidated, abused, or ignored within the very community that they seek to protect. Our project seeks to raise awareness about the injustice of gender-based violence, and especially violence against women in their community and environmental work, and to promote social norms change with regards to the acceptance of GBV in 20 communities in both provinces, Stengtereng and Ratanakiri. We will also support 6 communities in building their capacity to conduct GBV risk mapping and to develop mitigation plans accordingly. And we will support 70 women across both provinces to develop the skills to provide survival-centered support and peer support in case of incidents of gender-based violence. The project will also anchor transformative social norms change through the engagement of 50 men, including male community leaders, in providing peer support to men to promote fighting against GBV. Our approach is rooted in a feminist approach and guided by feminist principles. We will accompany communities in exploring various forms of GBV and understanding the impact that it has, not just on women, but also on children, men, and the communities at large. Our program is designed with empowerment of people and communities at its heart to be the leader of change for their own future. We are excited to start this project and work with communities themselves and local government and non-government actors to become the agents of change who bring safety, equality, and empowerment of women so that they can fully participate and contribute to their communities. Last but not least, we are thankful for the government of Norway for their support and to the Rice Grant Challenge for believing in the vision of our project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Helen. And thank you, Estella, for your excellent presentations about your work. I think that it makes the stakes of what the need is extremely clear. And you've really all presented. I mean, I know a bit about your projects, but it's nice that you've managed to present it in a relatively short amount of time. Also, the really thoughtful and sustainable enabling environment approach that you're taking to doing this work under some constrained conditions. So thank you. I would love to open it up now to questions from the audience about these projects. So please go ahead and drop your questions in the Q&A, and we will ask them. So all right. So we have a question here from Molly Gilligan, and this is a question for everyone. So she's wondering if the panelists could speak a bit more about the partnerships. How did you seek out and find partner organizations specializing in GBV, if in the cases where you are the environment organization, and vice versa? But I think the question goes either way. So how did you seek out the environment organization in the event you are the GBV organization? And in particular, she's calling out fauna and flora. How did you connect with Sea Saga? So maybe let's start with Estella, and then I think it's a great question as well for Natasha and Helen as well. So please.
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So we actually had heard about Sea Saga previous to this call because they had worked with another organization called Wild Act that we partner with in Nui Chua. And so, yeah, the space for conservation in Vietnam is quite collaborative. And we just reached out to them knowing that they had worked with Wild Act before and also had been a RISE sub-grantee in the past. And they were have been super supportive and willing to help us with this project. So it's been quite a new partnership, but so far I have a lot of, I'm looking forward to working with them and learning more about how we can integrate those policies into our work and with our partners. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you, Estella. Helen, Natasha?
Thanks, Georgia. STF Fund, we already had been working with Congo Initiative in other projects for a really long time. I think we've been in partnership with them for more than 5 years in Tanganyika province, working on peace building projects, community dialogue projects. So just working with communities, really addressing the impact of the environment, conflict issues in those locations. So when we saw this call, we immediately got to get how see and explore how we can apply for this together. And then also met during our conversations, we also met up IFED, which is the women organizations who are very well known in DRC, in Eastern DRC, for implementing a digital mapping and also digital documentation of GBV in Eastern DRC. So we were already in partnership in the case of Congo Initiative. And as we were preparing our application, we will find out about IFED, and then we started talking to them for us to be in a partnership for this. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so Oxfam in Cambodia, we are partnering with Culture and Environment Preservation Association, in short CEPA, and an organization called Bantisrai. We know them very well. We have worked with them for many years and in several projects. And CEPA is very embedded into the communities, and especially indigenous communities. They know the communities in those two provinces very well. They have supported them for many years. And Bantisrai is also a well-established women's rights organization in Cambodia for 25 years. And they also have become like a feminist organization as well. And Oxfam, as a organization that aspires to be a feminist ally and to promote feminist approaches, it was almost very natural that we partner with Bantisrai and CEPA. And what we also were very proud of, and also that we wanted to both CEPA and Bantisrai to learn from each other. So CEPA on gender-based violence and feminist approach, and Bantisrai on environment and conservation work. So this is how we chose our partners.
Thank you. Thank you all for your answers. And thank you, Molly, for the question. It is, the question that I think underpins the architecture of the RISE challenge. And it is, I think one of the hopes that this is, one of the things that helps makes the project sustainable long after the sort of funding goes away. So it's an excellent question. There's another question. There's many questions. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, we'll not be able to get to everyone's questions, but there's one that is very, I think, important that I would like to ask. It's by Shiwani Agrawal, and they ask, how do you navigate the cultural norms while tackling GBV in an area of intervention to ensure that men do not get threatened in a way that they do not invite your organization back for further interventions? So that's open to any of you all that want to take that question. Natasha, you maybe want to take this one? I was like, I know you've had a lot of experience in this.
Okay, thank you very much for this question. So we also take this into account, and I want to be honest and say that fortunately in Cambodia we have a lot of work on gender equality. So we have a good foundation on gender equality, and for this project, but we know that there are still men and people who still have entrenched harmful social norms and social belief and gender norms. So how we do this is that we work closely with everyone in the community, and we engage especially community male leader early, and we work with women leaders, and the Bantisrai that we are bringing into this project. They also have a program they have developed on promoting transformative masculinity. So they have experience in building groups and networks of men to reflect about what is masculinity, and then to reflect about how they can engage in transformative masculinity that will promote gender equality. And our approach is to really work with the communities themselves and the leaders, and for themselves to understand why gender-based violence is not beneficial, or it's not bringing any benefits to the communities.
Fantastic. Thank you, Natasha. And there are many more good questions. I'm so sorry we don't have the opportunity to get to them. But I want to make sure we have time for our next speaker and our next Q&A following the speaker. So yes. So thank you, Estella, Natasha, and Helen, and congratulations on being this year's Rise cohort. We're very excited to work with you and to follow your work, and you'll be hearing more to the audience. You'll be hearing more from these presenters and the projects. So next slide, please. All right. So I'm really pleased to move us to the next portion of the program, to the launch of the GBV Referral Pathways Guidance Note. This guidance note was first developed by a RISE grantee, in fact. The note was honed, expanded upon, and finalized by our next speaker, Adriana Lopez. Adriana is a gender justice and human rights professional with over a decade of experience preventing and responding to GBV across local, national, and global contexts. Her work bridges policy advocacy, program intervention, and capacity building to advance survivor-centered and systemic change. Lopez has led and advised GBV initiatives with organizations including the Tahririh Justice Center, the NYC Alliance Against Sexual Assault, and USAID. Welcome, Adriana.
Thank you, everybody. What an honor to be a part of this group today. Can you all hear me well? Yeah? Okay, cool. Truly grateful and for the presentations and inspiring work that the new RISE grantees are doing. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this conversation this morning. So I, as the previous presenters have already highlighted, if we can go to the next slide, please. Gender-based violence is deeply intertwined with environmental protection and conservation efforts. Really, gender-based violence is part of a broader pattern of inequality that stretches across environmental contexts. And when we leave it unaddressed, the negative short and long-term consequences and outcomes for survivors and for communities can destabilize social and economic systems, reduce household resilience, and really jeopardize the progress towards sustainable development goals. This guide that we worked on is really meant to help organizations build that capacity to develop site-specific referral pathways to effectively support survivors in a trauma-informed, do no harm approach. As Georgia mentioned, it grew out of the RISE Grant Challenge, which, as my colleagues have been saying, is really a first-of-its-kind mechanism supporting the work of organizations that are working on the intersections of gender-based violence and environmental and climate programming. As Georgia said, the initial version was drafted by one of the RISE grantees, and then we expanded it to really think about what are the key considerations that organizations need to be thinking about even prior to setting up a referral pathway. What are some step-by-step tips that we can provide, and then sample language that staff can use when a survivor does disclose abuse so that we can help them, again, in a trauma-informed way. We know as folks have mentioned, that there's a significant gap in resources tailored to help build knowledge, to strengthen organizational capacity, and to strengthen program practice, and to really help build and facilitate that collective action in this field or in this nexus. And so this tool is really intended to be the first of multiple mini toolkits that IUCN will be working on to help fill this gap. Next slide, please. So I know that there are some folks who in the chat have been asking, how do you start integrating, how do you do some of this work in terms of incorporating gender-based violence activities? You know, one of the things that we highlight in the referral pathways toolkit is really thinking about the organizations that we are working with and really thinking about building a referral network. So what is a referral network? The referral network is comprised of formal and informal actors and organizations. These can be service providers that deliver medical and mental health services, legal services, housing, food assistance, and other psychosocial supports. Organizations really want to think about what are the nonprofits, what are the community-based organizations, local government actors and state actors, and as well as private actors. Like, what are the ways in which they are supporting this kind of work so that we can make sure that we are creating that network for ourselves, and what are the ways in which they are providing support directly to survivors. And then for more remote areas where organizations are operating, it's really important to also think and not underestimate the importance of informal actors and the type of support that they can provide to survivors and to the community writ large. These can be community and religious leaders, midwives, teachers, program facilitators, police officers, or hotline operators. And the hotline operators don't necessarily have to be located in those, in those specific communities. They can be national or regional in nature, so that they can provide some technical assistance for organizations who are looking to establish programming, but also to get in the moment support when you do see cases come to your organization, or you have a disclosure from a survivor in your community. The idea really from this toolkit is that we want to highlight the importance of using a coordinated community response to working with survivors through the use of referral networks. When survivors come to us, depending on their age, their access to resources, the length and type of abuse that they've experienced, they may present to us with a variety of different needs. Broadly speaking, organizations tend to specialize on specific areas of need, or they tend to define scopes of work. So there are a lot of reasons, and that's a lot of reasons why that is, right? It's based on their mission, the staff skill set, the capacity, the budget. And so the idea really through the development of this referral network is that there are no organizations who are operating in isolation. And then the referral pathway, which we touch on in the toolkit, is really the process that staff can use so that when a survivor does disclose abuse, staff know, what kinds of next steps they need to take, what kind of information they need to provide to the survivor. Next slide. So as I said, I know that there's some organizations who are maybe in the initial stages, and this toolkit is really to support organizations who want to start bringing in gender-based violence programming, particularly doing some of the safeguarding and response. And so this is the perfect resource for you all. We know that everybody has a role to play in addressing, preventing, and mitigating gender-based violence. In my experience, when organizations start designing and implementing gender-responsive programming, and we start asking questions about how gender-based violence shows up in the work that we do, we will be surprised at the interconnections that we will find, and really the opportunities to intervene and to provide support to survivors. For non-GBV specialized organizations in particular, the role is really to listen, to inform about the choices that the survivor has and the resources available to them, and then really to connect them to those resources. So listen, inform, and connect. We listen to the survivor by validating their experience and letting them know that the violence that they've experienced is not their fault. And this is key because how we respond to survivors influences their future help-seeking behavior. And so we want to make sure that we are being as supportive as we can, so that they feel like they can, if they are ready to escape this abusive situation. Once a disclosure occurs, we want to inform them of the services that are available to them. We want to ask them if they are interested in receiving that information. And of course, we always take their lead, and we provide as many choices as is possible, depending on the context in which the organizations are operating in. And then if the survivor is ready to engage in service provision, we ask them if they want us to call together so that they can, we can do a warm handoff to those referring agencies. If the survivor is not ready to engage in service provision, that's okay. We honor that. Here, it's really important for organizations who are just starting this work that the survivors are intimately familiar with the details of their case in a way that we as providers will never be. We also know that when survivors are preparing to leave an abusive situation, or after they have left an abusive situation, that's when the violence tends to intensify. We tend to see stalking start or increase. We see higher rates of homicide and femicide. And so we really want to make sure that we are taking the survivors' lead. And this is really where the trauma-informed do no harm principles come into play. At the end of the day, the goal is to provide them with information and resources and let them make an informed decision for themselves. Next slide. Okay. So we in the toolkit address, again, some of the key considerations in order to implement or effectively implement a referral pathway. The network is that pre-work that will make the rest go efficiently and effectively, and to be, again, the trauma-informed practice that we want it to be. We talk in the book at more length about 4 key considerations that we want organizations to be thinking about as they start doing this work. Of course, the first step is really to conduct the resource mapping. And here, the key thing that organizations need to be thinking about is, what is the population that I intend to serve, so that we can develop the referral resources that are appropriate for that population. So to really understand what are the demographics, what are the unique vulnerabilities and challenges that this population faces. We talked earlier about service providers having very defined scopes of work, and service providers also tend to target specific populations. Some organizations may work with only children, some organizations may work only with LGBTQIA plus individuals or immigrant communities, or some may work with women and families. And so it's really important that as we are being the referral resource and do the resource mapping, that we know the population that we are going to serve so that we can provide that appropriate referral. And this really helps to reduce the re-traumatization by avoiding survivors having to retell their story to service providers that cannot serve them. The second step that we talk or address more in depth in the toolkit is the diversity of the referral network that we create, that it has to cut across different systems so that we can be responsive to the needs of survivors. I remember, for example, working with a survivor of human trafficking who called while still in an active trafficking situation, and she was being denied medical care and needed surgery urgently, but she feared that if she left, she was going to end up homeless. So she was having to negotiate between these two very basic needs, and really asking herself, do I leave to get the urgent medical care that I need and risk being homeless, or do I stay in this exploitative situation where I know that I will at least remain housed? And so we were able to work with her, provide safety planning so that she could escape, connect her with emergency housing, and be able to connect her with medical services. And then for remote areas, of course, I've worked also with survivors where their churches are the ones who come together to support them. And the third step that we address in the referral pathways toolkit is really making sure that organizations write down their own internal operating procedures and provide training for staff. Each country has different laws that govern how organizations should work or document gender-based violence cases and how they should handle survivors personally identifying information. If you are unsure, one option is always to consult gender-based violence experts in the region or in your country that can help inform your policy. So make sure that they are consistent with your country's laws, but also in alignment with best practices. In this line of work, I've often seen cases that involve child abuse that required mandated reporting to local agencies, government agencies. There's been times where we've handled or worked on cases that involved imminent harm to survivors or others. And so really responding to these cases is manageable if everyone is clear about what the policy is, who does what, and under what circumstances. So we want to make sure that those are written down and that we are doing periodic refreshers for staff. And then the last piece that we talk about in the toolkit is really implementing that referral pathways, which we will talk about in the next slide. Okay. So I know I'm not going to go through the lovely chart that we created, because I know you all can read, and we really want you to reference the toolkit as a whole. Really, we talked about the listening, inform, and the connect. This is really the step-by-step guide that staff members can reference. The most important thing that I want to highlight here, and what I want people to walk away with, is that talking to a survivor should really be like talking to a friend or a family member who just went through a traumatic experience. We want to make sure that we are listening non-judgmentally and with empathy. We want to inquire about their needs and help them connect to resources. And we want to thank them for trusting us with their story and reiterate that we will not share the information without their consent with others. And so, if it's a third party that discloses an incident of abuse, we want to do the same. We want to provide those resources to that third party and encourage them to provide them to the survivor. Next slide. And then the last piece is really, okay, moving back. Okay, sorry. The last piece is really about, making sure that, and some of our colleagues talked about it in the presentations, that we want to make sure that we are thinking and prioritizing self-care and building resilience for the people who are doing the work of caring for survivors and for the environment, right? And so what I want to leave you all is with a quote by famous doctor, whose name is Rachel Naomi Remen, that states that the expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. We want to make sure that as we are designing programs to support survivors, that we are also taking care of our own, that we address and mitigate the exposure or the development of vicarious trauma in a holistic way by implementing solutions that are both individually oriented and that we are implementing policies that really help organizationally build a culture of resilience for staff. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Adriana. This is, thank you. This is a really excellent and obviously abbreviated overview of the tool. So there's a lot more to dig into, a lot more that wasn't said, but have no fear. The tool is available. I've dropped the links in the chat. Let me know if you can't see them. I think I dropped them incorrectly the first time. It is available in English and Spanish at the moment. Of course, please contact us with additional questions if you have them. It is meant to be used widely by really any organization. It is targeted toward environmental organizations, but absolutely, please share widely. Now, before we move on to a bit of an abbreviated Q&A, we are running over time. So I do want to just take a moment, and I'm going to launch the poll. And I would so appreciate it if everyone would just take a second and to complete the poll. And in the meantime, I'm asking you to multitask as well. Please let us know if you have any questions for Adriana about the tool. So I'll just pause a second and see if there's some more questions coming in. And thank you for both. All right. Well, I have a question for Adriana, which is to your last slide about, self-care. I think it's really important. And I think, we've talked about how it's often an overlooked aspect of doing this work. So, if you could just share a little bit about strategies that you've seen that encourage people to prioritize that, people and organizations to prioritize that self-care so that they can sort of keep going and continue doing this work and provide the best support possible.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. And I do think that the first step is always raising awareness about how it can impact individuals, how some folks may be more at risk of exposure to vicarious trauma. In one of the last organizations I work with, over 50% of the workers there were immigrants themselves or sons and daughters of immigrants, and they were working with immigrant survivors of gender-based violence. And so, the cases and the work that we were doing really hit home in a way that we understood we needed to make sure that we were taking care of our people. And then I can't remember the exact statistic, but equally as high were the number of people who had who identified as primary or secondary survivors of gender-based violence. And so it's really important not to underestimate how our staff are impacted by some of the topics that we are working on, and really understanding who is at risk helps us then identify the different strategies that people can implement. In the organization that I was at, we worked extensively on, what are the things that individuals can implement, and then what organizationally can we support with on the individual level, right? Making sure that people were taking breaks during the day, that they were not overscheduling, different cases throughout the day, that they were pacing themselves, and then making sure that they had folks that they could talk to after a difficult conversation with clients. Oftentimes we, have to engage in conversation with survivors, and they are not always good news. And so it's really important that we are supporting our staff when they're having difficult conversations. And then also celebrating the wins. And then at the organizational level, making sure that resources are available. So group counseling, individual counseling, being able to provide benefits for staff, vacation, so that they can rest and recover from that emotionally charging work that they're doing on the day-to-day. And there's a lot. I could go on and on because I'm very passionate about this topic, but I am mindful of time, and I really appreciate everybody showing up here today.
Thank you. Adriana, do you have time for one more question?
Yes, of course.
Okay, there's I think a very good apt question that came in, so I want to make sure we are able to answer it. This is from AK. It says, I'm curious if the referral pathways include monitoring and follow-up guidance if appropriate. So how do we know if the referral pathways are working, maintaining quality, and in contexts where referrals may not be available or safe, is there guidance on what to do?
My God, would you be able to put it, can you repeat it, or maybe put it down?
I will do both. I will put it in the chat, and I'm going to read it again.
Okay, awesome.
So I'm just going to summarize the questions part of it. So how do we know if the referral pathways are working? And in contexts where referrals may not be available or safe, is there guidance on what?
Yeah. So I think, the monitoring is key. And we want to make sure that, if you, oftentimes what happens, right, when we provide support to a survivor and we are a trusted partner in their process, the survivors will keep coming back to us if, when we connected them to other agencies, those agencies were not able to support them, right? And so one way in which we know whether the referral pathways is working or not is, are we effectively able to make those connections to other community resources, and our survivors coming back to us with ongoing needs in the community. And sometimes it's not that the agency is doing something wrong. It also has a lot to do with what is available in the community. So being able to access social safety net programs, which is, I think, part of the other part of the community coordinated response, is that if the resources are not there, then we're really looking at the advocacy piece at the community level, right? What kinds of safety nets can we organize with the government, nonprofits, and private actors to be able to meet those needs of the community. And then I think the second question, maintaining quality and in context. So we talk in the maintaining quality, we talk in the toolkit about making sure that organizations are doing their due diligence to connect with those partners ahead of time, really understand what are the services that they provide, who is the point of contact, what is their time frame for returning, a call to survivors and providing the resources, right? All of those questions are important. And in that process, we assess whether that agency is trauma informed, and really thinking about those key principles of survivor-centered, do no harm, non-discrimination, and all of that. So that is one way to monitor the quality, right, of the referral network. And then in contexts where referrals may not be available and safe, I have worked with a lot of survivors in rural areas, and oftentimes in those instances, it really is the informal actors or churches or teachers or neighbors who come together to provide support. I've had survivors who it was really their congregation who made sure that the survivor was able to escape, provide immediate housing, provide transportation, so that they could stay engaged in the legal process, so that they could obtain some legal relief. And so I would never underestimate informal networks, because I have seen it work. And it really is a matter of figuring out who is an ally to the work that we are doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Adriana. And thank you for everyone for your questions. Apologies, we're not able to get to all the questions. With that, I would love to move us to our closing speaker. None other than IUCN's very own Jackie Siles. Jackie is a senior gender specialist on the Human Rights and Conservation team at IUCN, where she has worked for over 25 years on advancing sustainable and equitable development in diverse environmental sectors, such as protected areas, fisheries, coastal marine, energy, forest, climate change, watershed management, and agriculture, as well as social and gender inclusion in public policy development. So pretty much everything. Thank you and welcome, Jackie.
Thank you, Georgia, for that introduction. And as we conclude this webinar, I would like to thank to the speakers and almost more than 250 participants that have been contributing to this important event. I would like also express our thanks on behalf of IUCN to the government of Norway and NORAD for their leadership and partnership in supporting the resilient, inclusive, and sustainable environment rights challenge. Today's event has highlighted a critical issue that deserves further greater attention across the conservation and climate change initiatives. The intersection between gender-based violence, gender inequality, and environmental action, the rights challenges, was created to help address a key gap in this space, which is the need for practical knowledge and test approaches on how to address gender inequality and gender-based violence risks with environmental and climate and projects. So through the projects launched today, locally led organizations are taking an important step to demonstrate what can this looks in practice. And we are really proud to support the work of Oxman and its partners in Cambodia, Flora Fauna Sisaga, and Vietnam, and Turfon and its partners in Democratic Republic of Congo. We are sure that their initiative will support communities on the ground, but also will generate critical information and learning that can help us to inform policies, programs, and practices across the environmental sector. Today, we just finished launching the new gender-based violence referral pathway guidance tool, which as you so provide practical guidance for environmental organizations on how to establish safe and effective support systems for survivors of gender-based violence. We hope that this tool is an important step towards strengthening the capacity of the conservation and environmental practitioners to respond responsibly and ethically to when working with communities with this issue. So finally, I would like to congratulate the 2025 RISE grantees cohorts. We look forward to learning from your work and seeing the positive impacts your initiatives will have in the communities and the lives of women and girls where you operate. So thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to continuing this important work together. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That concludes our webinar. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Please stay in touch. Please download the Referral Pathways Guidance Note. And thank you to our presenters. Thank you to NORAD, to Martin Larnemark, and yeah, everyone for joining. So see you soon, I hope.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.